Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let's open up 2024 on a brighter note for Deschutes County Commissioners meetings. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I want to recognize Stephen, who is our audiovisual person. Thank you for being there. It's can be challenging at times. We do have some citizen input, and Stephen, I'll ask you later if there's anybody online. Rondo, would you like to make your comments first? Remember, they are limited to 3 minutes.
Good morning, 2024 County Commission. Happy New Year. I want to talk about something a little personal as it strikes me. I wrote down on that piece of paper, separation of church and state, or religion and state actually is what I wrote. I do want to speak to how this county commission represents us. And I'm here very much as a voter and very, very aware that we're going into another campaign season. Of course, not all of you are running this year, but I know that you all want to represent us well. So I want to speak to the issue of symbology as we wear our uniforms to work, whatever that is. And as this body is representing all of us, I just want to send a personal message to all of you that I'm an atheist. And we all know how religions throughout history, especially certain religions, have treated atheists. I don't have to get gruesome here, but we know what the history is. So when an elected representative wears a symbol of a religion on his or her outfit, he's sending a message, or she's sending a message, and I'm hearing it, and it's one that atheists are very, very attuned to just by the nature of who we are. We know that religions dominate wherever they can and try to represent Christians. And I will speak to Christianity specifically because that is the culture that we're surrounded in. I would like to ask you to not be sending signals to certain people that say that I represent you more, and at the same time you're sending another signal saying I represent you less. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Rondo. Thank you for those comments. Ashley Scribner. I believe so.
Hello.
Yes, yep. It's working.
Good morning. My name is Ashley Schreiber. I would like to talk about Free on the Outside and the property at 64652 Wilson. For their use in the transitional housing program, we feel this is a very poor decision and location given the saturation of families and parks and schools. I empathize with anyone without a home, not by choice. While I have never experienced homelessness myself, I'm a victim of domestic violence and sexual assault. Sorry, I'm really nervous. My compassion not only lies with people who have had similar traumatic experience, but the families in my neighborhood. But I also fear that disrupting this program might create homelessness as a result. And for that, I'm remorseful. I understand the unfortunate stigma around the term sex offender for many individuals, some having very old convictions. However, I do not sympathize having to carry the title of pedophile for the rest of your life. That's earned. What really makes me angry is the complete disregard for my neighbors and their viewpoints. We were never offered a neighborhood conversation in any way. It clearly says on the flyer that was supposedly circulated to contact Mike Cross to address any questions or concerns. and he provided his cell phone number. I can say personally he has not lived up to that commitment. I am very skeptical he visited the homes he claims to have on November 27th. It has come to my attention in 2018, Mike Cross opened a halfway house in Oregon City. He acquired the property on Roosevelt Street, and neighbors were kept in the dark until the very last minute when it was conveniently almost too late. But they protested as we have done. Mike Cross eventually negotiated with neighbors. The house on Roosevelt ended up being used specifically for women and still is to this day. I've spoken to a couple of the neighbors involved in that 2018 protest against Free on the Outside. I have valid reason to believe that these houses, including the Roosevelt property, are being poorly managed. It's January 3rd, and we still have almost no answers to questions that we have asked for over a month. The petition is currently sitting at 735 signatures. I respectfully ask that you take our community's feelings on the issue into consideration. I propose that we immediately pause Free on the Outside in their bent operation and follow in the footsteps of the neighborhood in Oregon City who negotiated with Mike Cross. Please consider designating 640, 652 Wilson Avenue specifically as a women's housing facility only. I think it's the most fair outcome for everybody. My other suggestion would just be to walk it back and reevaluate the situation entirely. I trust the ethics of our county government in doing the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
You did 3 minutes perfectly. Thank you. Yes. Ryan Reinke? Rednick, excuse me, Ryan.
Gonna bring up the whole family if that's okay.
It's part of your message.
It is. I'd like to introduce you to my wife Esther and our two beautiful young daughters, Juniper, 2 and 4 months, and then Hope, 4 months here. We live 2 blocks away from the proposed shelter for sex offenders and felons. And we frequently travel by there en route to Kiwanis Park. Could be on scooters or biking or walking, or to Bonta for some ice cream. And you know, it won't be the same. We haven't had sidewalks in the neighborhood ever until recently with the Wilson Corridor improvements. That new sidewalk provides accessibility and equity for the neighborhood, and gives us the opportunity for, you know, to walk to the park on a sidewalk, which we were thrilled about. And now, if Esther's going there alone, she'll be looking over her shoulder because just the awareness of the presence of sex offenders in that house changes the neighborhood, whether or not something happens, although there is a risk of true harm occurring to young children like these ones and these ones back here. You know, I think helping felons and sex offenders rebuild their lives and return to society as productive citizens is a worthwhile cause. And there's no doubt that COIC and Deschutes County Community Justice Department had the best of intentions during the initial development of the grant agreement. However, the county fell into a difficult position with tight funding timelines and limited housing inventory for sale. As an unfortunate consequence of these factors, a property was selected that poses unacceptable risks to the neighborhood. Nonetheless, the Community Justice Department served you all up a nice-looking, well-decorated crab sandwich that was swiftly approved before the issues could be fully understood and addressed. Key concerns: 1, the inhabited triplex units. The timeline set forth in the schedule require people to move in as early as now, up to between 6 and 8 sex offenders. One of these units is occupied by 2 young women, and the other unit is occupied by a Hispanic mother and her 4 children. The county is forcing these women and children to live in the same building as the sex offenders for an unknown period of time until they can secure housing elsewhere and move out. While the existing tenants have been offered cash for keys incentives to move out earlier than required by law, lump sums of cash won't necessarily help them meet the income requirements, like 3 times rent, with the new rental applications, and they'll likely have difficulties relocating promptly. In a city that's struggling with homelessness, these women and children are being displaced in order to make room for 10 to 15 sex offenders at a time, up to 50 a year, who will now occupy the triplex. The proximity to minors, bus stops, walking routes to Bend High School, proximity to Kiwanis Park, Vince Guinness Stadium, goes on, and I'm running out of time. You know, we've pointed out a couple issues with potential conflicts with the shelter code or the grant agreement. County's response has generally been that everything's done perfectly legal and above board. While we still have doubts about that being how rushed this process was, even if what the county's done here is sufficiently legal, there are a few other important ethical questions that come to mind. May I continue for another minute?
Yes.
First question, is it wise? Is it wise to site an alcohol recovery home next to a liquor store if you want the residents to recover and not relapse? Is it wise to locate predators in a habitat abundant with vulnerable prey, like ravens and sage grouse, perhaps? Is it wise to locate a facility for up to 15 sex offenders and criminals with child proximity restrictions in a location where children live, play, walk, bike, roll, and wait for their bus? 2, is it aligned?
I'll just say, and they're not just living next to or in proximity, but they're sharing a fence with multiple kids.
Thanks. Second question, is it aligned with the citizens' interests, with your constituents' interests? The petition opposed to this has 736 signatures and counting. There are hundreds of online comments expressing deep concern and disappointment with this decision. And there's the public testimonies here today. The third question, is it socially just? In a city that is struggling with homelessness, women and children are being forced out to make room for sex offenders and felons. Facilities like this disproportionately land on the east side of Bend, where a higher concentration of lower income working families and vulnerable populations have to bear the vast majority of adverse effects. These neighborhoods presumably don't have the political power or wealth for legal representation, which would be required to protect their neighborhoods. So it lands on the east side. The location selected for felons and sex offenders further exacerbates the dramatic economic and quality of life gap between the rich in the west and the working class and poor on the east side. And as a result, the east side neighborhoods get worse and the west side neighborhoods get better. And this decision further exacerbates that problem we have in town. So thank you for the extra time. I urge you to hear these concerns, take them seriously, and please take action to dial back what occurs at the shelter. If it can't be relocated, which would be our preference, please enact specific action and limitations on who can be in the shelter. At a bare minimum, prohibit level 2 sex offenders and level 3 sex offenders and criminals with child proximity restrictions from being in the shelter. All others, you know, the guy that peed outside and got a level 1 offense, not a concern. You know, guy that dealt drugs 10 years ago, give him a second chance. You know, so this could still operate in some fashion and provide a public benefit, but please dial back who would be allowed here. And the suggestion Ashley made, I think, is good for a woman and children recovery facility. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you for bringing your family in.
I do want to ask we've asked staff to prepare a question and answer document to address many of the perceptions of risk, pieces of information that were shared today. And my impression was that we were close to releasing that last week, but it's not out yet. Can we can staff give us an update on where that is and when that will be available to the public?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And I just coordinated with our Deputy County Administrator, Whitney Hale, just prior to the meeting about that very question, because we did have a draft last week. We had additional questions that came in over the weekend. We're continuing to update it based on every question that has come in, but it is going through a review right now, and I think we hope to issue it tomorrow. Is that correct, Whitney? I'm just looking for your head nod. Yes, we will issue the frequently asked questions document tomorrow, Thursday, January 4th.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no one else in the room then that wanted to speak. Oh, Stephen, do we have someone online? Okay. Good morning, Doreen. Doreen, can you please unmute?
Good morning, commissioners. Here again to talk.
Happy New
Good
Year.
morning. Hey, you too. Central Oregon airports led in tyrannical activity. Our homes and farms on the east side of Bend have endured approximately 1 million low flights and maneuvers in the past 4 years. However, the numbers are highly inconsistent, suggesting reporting is inaccurate, and that number is much higher. I provided you studies which show blood lead in people up to 2 miles from airports serving piston engine aircraft, which use leaded fuels. Generally speaking, the smaller planes and helicopters used in flight training occurring heavily at Bend, Redmond, and Sisters airports. Colorado just tested 9 homes near and under the racetrack pattern flight training occurs in, and all 9 had dangerously high levels of lead. I provided you studies demonstrating airport lead in the environment 2, 5, and 14 miles from these airports, Reed, Hillview, Seattle, and LAX. Many airports have transitioned. Even Portland is in the process of a rapid transition away from leaded fuels. There's an improved drop-in replacement. Continued use is inexcusable at EPA's 2020 NEI reporting Bend Municipal at the highest airborne lead in the state. I've sent you the studies on health impacts of lead, including increased hypertension, fatal heart attacks, aggression, violent bone and joint pain, tooth enamel loss, insomnia, fatigue, poor cognitive function, reduced IQ, and volumetric brain loss. The daily physical and mental anguish from inescapable and unbearable flight activity and excessive doses of lead and retaliatory noise targeted at those suffering and complaining is unacceptable. Branches are stripped from trees throughout the east side, even ones that touch our home. Trees that Bend Airport flight schools and benefactors swoosh because aircraft are so low that there's destructive wake turbulence and wingtip vortice damages, sometimes up to 300 times a day. I provided evidence of this retaliation coming from an FAA employee, the state police, and numerous medical professionals, including one from the Heart Center. Please stop approving increase in flight activity, protect citizens' farms and those impacted by road and air traffic from these airports, which the FAA clearly states is your job, not theirs. Develop an accurate environmental study. No more public funding to accommodate private for-profit aviation businesses and poor-performing colleges. Protect your citizens and your constituents. And, you know, the Walker Road, or the road thing that you're doing today, also, you know, that's really questionable because it accommodates airport activity. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Doreen. Stephen, is there anyone else online? Okay. I believe a Carla Laws was going to be online. You don't see her. Okay. All right. So okay. Well, she can always testify next Wednesday if she wants to. That brings us to our consent agenda.
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Mr. Chang,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. We'll go to action item number 5, being with fire program update.
Good morning, commissioners. For the record, Jody Barham. I'm the co-coordinator for Oregon Living with Fire, and I believe we have Dr. Jennifer Fenton online, the other co-coordinator for Oregon Living with Fire.
And good morning, Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. I'll be taking over some of the administrative role that Joe Stetler has done with Oregon Living with Fire with his true retirement coming up.
True retirement.
I think we're going to believe it this time. We're excited to have Eric take over and be working with us for the program of work. We did something a little different this year. You know, last year we brought our program of work, which is in your packet. But this year, what we did was we added on some of our contract deliverables. So Oregon Living with Fire, for the public's benefit, is funded through a grant with the U.S. Forest Service, a grant with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and with contributions from Deschutes, Crook, Jefferson, and Klamath counties. So all that money gets put in together, and then we implement this program of work, which is implementing a national cohesive strategy in the Central Oregon region. So part of what we wanted to highlight today for you is that as we look ahead into 2024 and beyond, we have a contracts and agreements in place for the next 5 years. So we'll be continuing this work under those agreements, but we wanted you to be able to see where our program of work aligns with the grants we've been afforded and with the personal services contracts that you signed with Dr. Fenton and myself, to make sure that we're delivering on what was being asked. Primarily, as we head into 2024, also looking at the use of prescribed fire. You know, we talk about learning to live with fire. That's one of the big tenets of the cohesive strategy. It's about the fire adapted communities in the Central Oregon region. It's about using fire where allowable. And it's also about a safe, effective wildfire response. So we connect partners working with the Deschutes Forest Collaborative, the Ochoco Forest Collaborative, and sometimes the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership. There's a lot of acronyms that we use, but wanted to make sure that you knew that we are presenting at the Wildland Urban Interface Conference in March on behalf of the 3 counties and the program of work that we implement here. And we'll be sharing with people internationally that attend that conference how to learn to live with fire and some of the best practices that we've found here in Central Oregon. We're also, as you saw in your next agenda item, applying for some grant funds. And this is where I want to kick it over to Dr. Fenton to talk a bit about the grant work that she's been doing this past 6 months and what she's looking forward to in the next 6 months. So if Jen is online and we can bring her up, that would be fantastic.
Hi, Jody, I'm here. So good morning, everyone. It's been a crazy few months. I'm going to start with the most pressing for the Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities, or the BRIC grant. We tried it last year. Oregon Emergency Management came back and said, hey, this verbiage isn't quite right, but we'd like you to try again. So this year, I'm hoping to secure $6.2 million for High Desert Museum and the Warm Springs Museum for defense, so that they don't have to evacuate in case of a fire. There is a 10% cost match requirement, but that is going to be absorbed by the organization that is going to be building these systems. It is sort of it's basically a big sprinkler that goes around the whole system that ties in with the existing fire and fuels reduction work that has already been done. In the last couple of years, we've done things with the CWDG, or the Community Wildfire Protection Program. Those went off this year under the direction of Oregon Department of Forestry. And then there's just been a couple other one-off grants that I've done for HOAs, and I've helped with COIC with their new program that they want to do with studying ingress and egress for wildfire disasters, just kind of seeing what happens if we have to evacuate. Looking forward to a productive 2024. I'm going to get this BRIC grant this time. I've been working really tight with Oregon Emergency Management. They're super excited about the project. And they've kind of given me some ins and outs of what to do and what not to say to FEMA, because we all know FEMA is kind of a bear. But looking forward to securing as much grant funding as the system and you guys will allow me to get on behalf of Central Oregon.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, we had a really successful grant workshop in South County late fall. So, and that is something that is a focus of the Natural Resources Conservation Service to connect to folks in Southern Deschutes County. So we'll be focusing more efforts down there. We've created a webpage on our website for grants as a clearinghouse where the public can go and learn about grant opportunities to mitigate their properties for wildfire. We've also been partnering with Discover Your Forest, Deschutes Trails Coalition to help the public be aware of what's going on out in the forests, hosting events for those organizations and partnering. We'll be doing the Central Oregon Fire Year briefing again. So mark your calendars for May 14th. We'll be in this room and gearing up for the fire season, which we hope, will be less every year. We know living with smoke impacts the public health here. And so we participate in meetings. You'll see a lot of messaging come out about smoke, how the public can stay safe. You'll see more consistent messaging in our newsletters and online on social media. We're going to be picking up the pace on that as we head into 2024 as well, because we've been busy attending some conferences like the 6th Annual National Cohesive Strategy Conference workshop, meeting with partners, and we want to take some of the lessons learned and some of those best practices and the latest science and work with partners here on the ground to really help our public be prepared to receive wildfire, because we know it's going to happen. We live in a fire-prone environment. And so helping our public be prepared for evacuations, working with our emergency managers, helping the public prepare their properties. That 0 to 5 feet is the most critical. So I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit with you 3 commissioners, because you're so well versed and connected in all this work. And I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you for your various participations in groups. Commissioner Adair with Project Wildfire, Commissioner DeBone with my group, Commissioner Chang with the Deschutes Forest Collaborative. You all really invest your time and show a great responsibility to your constituents here in the county by being informed and engaged. So thank you for that. Eric, did you have anything else to add?
Jody, I have a question.
Yeah.
At the last Fire Free meeting, I was told that we really need to get money down on an individual level to people to actually help them. And you're mentioning this webpage. Do you have funding then available for people in South County that they can individually apply for? Is there any kind of a possibility like that? And how much is it?
There is. So what we do is we don't have the funding for Oregon Living with Fire, but we connect people to the funding. So the Oregon Department of Forestry has some funding. The Natural Resources Conservation Service has funding, and all people have to do is get a hold of us. And that's where Jen comes in and can help with reviewing grant applications or connecting people to Kevin Moriarty and the funds that you all have approved for your Natural Resources Department to distribute throughout the county. So we do that connection, but we don't have funding ourselves. It's come from other entities, and we assist landowners with applying for that funding. Okay. So yes, those are on our website.
So what if somebody's 80 years old and they really have a hard time navigating websites? Is there a phone number or something that they can call to get a hold of Jen?
Yep, they can call, and our phone number's out there. We also have.
But is it on the web?
It is. Yep.
Okay, what I'm talking about, I talk to people that are 80 that live in South County, and, they have hard times with technical things. And so I'm just saying, what is their phone number so we can put it out there so people can actually, that have, a great need, but don't have access to internet?
I would connect them with Jen. Do you want to give your number, or do you want to have them call?
Is there like a generic number for your group?
There is.
No,
There's
it's just.
Do you have the Google Voice number?
No, I don't. I don't have a problem with them having my personal phone number or my email or any of that stuff. So I do know that with the natural conservation group, we did get together and give quite a few packages out to some HOAs and whatnot in South County, just from funding that Natural Resources had to give out. We also did get the $500,000 from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office to help to further fund fire-free days and such like that. So, but like I said, I don't have a problem with them having my direct phone number. They can call me anytime.
Okay. Otherwise, they can call the 541-241-6235.
Okay.
And that'll go to my phone, and I'll direct them to Jen.
Okay, sometimes it's just really nice to have a person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it is that time of year where people can start thinking about cleaning up for spring.
Right. And the grant cycles are at various times of the year. So that's another point if people want to call or check the website, then they can get into the right cycle because when they may want to do the work, maybe a little too late to apply. So that's where Jen is really good at managing a grants calendar and knowing what's coming due when, so they can call and get a hold of us that way.
Oh, great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jody.
For the specific example you just mentioned, I would also mention that the Heart of Oregon Corps is one of the designated Oregon Conservation Corps programs within the state of Oregon, and is providing not dollars but labor, direct bodies, youth supervised by crew managers to implement defensible space treatments for fixed income people in what are labeled as disadvantaged communities, and I've seen them doing work on a number of senior citizens properties in South County. So you could route them through Oregon Living with Fire to try to find funds, or you could connect them potentially to people who could directly do the work for them.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd be happy to make that connection. Thank you for bringing them up. They're a great partner of ours as well. And I would say a lot of our work is focused on those vulnerable populations, whether it's seniors or people with mobility issues or financial restraints. That's really who we're trying to reach because they are the most vulnerable and have the most catastrophic loss when fire occurs.
So a couple comments, Oregon Living with Fire kind of says it all right there. We've regressively tried to put out forest fires for 100 years, and we're still doing that, but we need to reduce the threat to any property, private property owners. I know, and I've said this in the past, that, a lot of people in Southern Deschutes County buy an acre and they're kind of behind their little wall of trees and it's nice and private, but all of a sudden on a hot wind-driven event day in August, it could turn into a firestorm. So understanding what defensible spaces is so important. And then, I think of this effort, Oregon Living with Fire, is bridging the gap, bridging information up and down from the National Cohesive Strategy all the way to the property owner in partnership with the state and the federal government. So as I say, kind of the big picture of what we're doing here. We'll get to the BRIC grant next because that is an agenda item for us here. I know there's been efforts in our road districts for right-of-way clearing. So that's a moment, and we get those calls during the summertime when there's efforts for opening up the rural road district areas, taking the small diameter trees out to the edge of the right-of-way. People see it as their front yard, but they really are opening it up. So it's nice to have that effort happen, and I'd always advocate for that also. So it's good to have the partnership with our multiple counties here, be an example. And, even if a fire starts, we want to reduce the threat. That's kind of the big picture here, knowing that we could and would have a fire start anywhere, private, public land, recreation, industrial activity, accident, anything. We need to be able to respond to that. So Oregon Living with Fire is the effort.
Thank you. And I'll put in one last plug for folks to be informed. If you text CO Fire to the 888-777, you can get alerts on your phone for prescribed fire, smoke impacts in the Tri-County area. Our program, one of the other things we've done in the last 6 months is taken over the Central Oregon Fire Info.org website administration. So we're working with all the partners because that is a Tri-County effort. We felt that would be appropriate. And Kevin and Corinne have enough on their plates. So we're helping out with that now as well. So encourage folks to sign up for those text alerts because that website does prescribed fire and wildfire information.
Just another note for a property owner that has the land to be able to do a little cleanup fire, just, branches and small sticks on their property. Now's the time. I did that this weekend, started a fire, and man, it was even hard to keep it going because it's so wet out there. But it was good. Once you get it going, it stays contained and you can just burn down a little pile of needles and brush right now without threatening anybody. So a little bit of smoke, but that's okay too.
So Jody, anything else you want to update us with at this time?
No, that was everything for now. We'll be meeting with the
Did you
other.
guys actually apply for any grants in the last 6 months? Because I noticed this is a 6-month report. Any grants that were awarded in the last 6 months to your program?
I don't think in the last 6 months, Jen, the OSFM one was earlier in the year, right?
OSFM was awarded in May, so yeah.
And how much was that for?
That was
500,000.
$500,000, right?
Yep.
That Kevin and Corinne are administering. We applied for that and then they're administering it through the county. Any others for the fall, Jen, that you were working on?
I was just assisting the Oregon Department of Forestry with some of the CWDG or the community wildfire protection stuff. And that was, I believe they asked for $10 million.
Yeah, so we need to be ready for those big funds that may come through also.
What do we know on that one?
That one is it's usually done in May or June. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be May or June. Last year it got delayed a little bit because they had so many applications. But I'm thinking it's going to be May or June that we're going to hear something.
Okay.
It's in October and then they release it in May and June.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Jody, I have one more question. So the last item on this work plan is about biomass utilization. I have been contacted by Jim Archuleta, who's like the biochar guy. And he wants to have some in-depth discussions about doing biochar production in the region, and I don't necessarily have the bandwidth to work with him on that. Is that a handoff that I could do to Oregon Living with Fire?
Yes, absolutely. Send me his information. Be happy to set that up.
Thank you.
I'll be catching up on the Prineville Renewable Energy Project next week. So good timing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there might be he contacted me originally about mobile biochar production. So being able to pull up at neighborhoods where there's, kind of a collective pile going, being able to pull up at landings out in the forest, to dispose of fuel without, I mentioned him that one of our big problems here in Deschutes County is that our compost facility is undersized, and there's a whole lot of fuels materials that are going directly into our landfill. So that they were just trying to problem solve around that. So I mean, theoretically, a biomass power plant in Prineville, it's pretty far away, but theoretically you could chip material and bring it there. But I think more likely trying to figure out some way of making it much smaller at the landing, not trying to transport it to a distant market would be better.
That would be great. We do have some communities really interested in that. In fact, one of the grants that Jen had helped with was for Crooked River Ranch to get some air curtain burners and do some mitigation work that way. So if they haven't been successful getting those, they might be a great place for him to start with a partnership to see if that type of use would be beneficial. I think they would be a fantastic area, and their fire department would be ready and willing to help with that.
I am going to loop you on my email response.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So Jody, when you say the biomass plant in Prineville is far away, are we talking 10 years, 5 years? I know the governor was supportive of it.
Very supportive of it. They had a funding gap that I'm going to, part of the meeting next week, find out if they were able to fill that. We had looked at applying for BRIC for them previously and were denied because it was considered a construction project, which they wouldn't allow. So that we weren't able to help them fill that gap in funding. So that's what they were waiting for. And then I think once they had that, they were getting good to go. So I'll know more next Wednesday, Commissioner. And then if you'd like, I'm happy to report back.
Could you loop us back in? Because I do think that's, originally, I think we were looking at something in Lapine 5 years ago, and it just seems like that idea keeps circling around. I know we're doing something at Mount Bachelor.
Yeah.
So be nice
Yeah.
to do something in Prineville.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I'll loop back with you on that.
Okay, so why don't we then transition on to item number 6, the application for the FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant.
Yes, for this one, Jen mentioned it in the previous item, but we are seeking board approval to apply for a FEMA grant called BRIC, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. We're seeking approval to apply for approximately $6.2 million, and that would go to install fire suppression systems at the Warm Springs, or the museum at Warm Springs, and also at the High Desert Museum. Do you want to add anything, Jen? I think you covered it pretty well, the last item.
So I guess my key question is, can you
here.
represent for us the reasons that it was determined to be an ineligible project last time, and what modifications have been made to make it a more eligible project this time?
Well,
Go ahead, Jen.
Originally, we had it called the water delivery system. It was a verbiage issue. A lot of times when grant panelists get packages, they're not from the same region. And so it might go to a region that doesn't understand that it's a wildfire issue and just go, oh, it's a big sprinkler, this is not eligible. And they just sent it off because they read it initially to be just a big, like, an irrigation project, which it isn't. Oregon Department of Emergency Management came back and said, hey, we'd love you to reapply. We know this is an eligible project, but there was some naming conventions that FEMA kind of lost their mind over. Here are some suggestions for renaming it. And I've actually built in to the new name for it, that it's for the development of fire resilient landscapes for Indigenous cultures and museums, so that they know immediately, hey, I need to pay attention to this. It was just a naming convention issue where they read it to be a big sprinkler and saw it as like something that you'd find out in a farmer field or something. So they just labeled it to be not eligible based on that. But Oregon Emergency Management looked at it and went, this is really eligible. They personally asked me to reconsider applying and just to send in a letter of intent. Hey, we're going to reapply. It was the smoothest transition ever on that front. So they're asking me every day, hey, do you need help? What can we help you with? There's been a transition at Wildfire Water Solutions, which is the sole source that would be building this out. I met with him yesterday, spent a couple hours. We have a very clear direction of where, exactly what we need and the different types of schematics that FEMA is going to want to see, as far as what the budget's going to be, all of those things. And so it really just came down to somebody in maybe Chicago looked at it and went, sprinklers aren't, this is not eligible. And they just, threw it aside because they didn't read it. They just read the title and decided that it wasn't eligible. But Oregon Emergency Management is adamant that it is eligible and given me a way forward to get it further.
Okay. Thank you. So, new wording.
And this application is strengthened by that title. The previous one, there wasn't an understanding of the indigenous artifacts that are being protected, not just the animals or the cost, the exorbitant cost and timing it would take to evacuate such a facility. They need to be able to shelter in place, which is why understanding that their sister museum, the museum at Warm Springs, also is wanting to be a part of this application. That shows a stronger tie to the indigenous peoples and their artifacts that are at both museums. And it helps with the application to have a tribal partner versus a museum on the near a community that has a different profile and different scale for being considered. So when you look at Bend proper versus the larger region, I think this really helps. Like Jen said, the Oregon Office of Emergency Management wants this to be successful this time. And that really, I think helping us help our partners is going to lead to the success for these museums to shelter in place, because in addition to water, the system can produce retardant to protect the properties. So, which is, again, like Jen said, somebody looked at it and thought, oh, it's a sprinkler system. They're just going to water things down, which can be useful. But it also has other mechanisms to protect those properties and those priceless artifacts.
So what was the ask last year then?
Jen, wasn't it around 3.2 million?
Yeah, last year it was 3.25. This year they're estimating it's going to be 3.6 for high desert, just because of inflation and maybe materials. And then the Warm Springs Museum is going to be around 2.5. And that's high. They would rather ask for too much than not enough. And then, on that front, but they did agree, Wildfire Water Solutions, again, like Eric said, did agree to absorb that cost for the 10% match. So Deschutes County does not have to split the bill in any fashion.
So Jen, maybe you can help. Have you heard of other BRIC grant applications? I know there's a discussion about a North Unit Irrigation District hydro project possibly. Has that come up in your review or discussions?
I haven't heard anything about that. I do know there has been awards where people have moved their community water sanitation. Like last year, I believe it was Medford. It was either Medford or Ashland that got part of a BRIC grant to actually move their water filtration for the city. Other than that, there isn't anything even really close to what wildfire water would do for wildfire defense.
But I'm just pointing out that we're going to be the county, and we're the applicant or whatever if that's the official. We may be asked for multiple BRIC grants. So what does that look like?
I guess I'm not understanding your question. You're going to be asked for multiple BRIC grants. So is there more people in Deschutes County that are asking to apply? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So we've heard of a project in Deschutes County. North Unit Irrigation District has canal by Redmond, and they're talking about a hydro project which will save water and create energy. They think it might qualify. I don't know if it qualifies as well. I don't know how to judge that. But I'm just saying we may have multiple BRIC grants come to us as the Board of Commissioners in Deschutes County.
Okay.
I think awards, I'm trying to remember last year, Jen, if there were multiple applications in a region, they were still awarded, even if they're close to each other, particularly if they have different priorities, where ours might be for fire protection, where North Unit Irrigation District might be for the hydropower and power generation, clean energy. So I can't remember the full list for the state of Oregon last year, Jen, but it seemed like there were some I know in Southern Oregon that were in proximity to one another, but met different goals and were still awarded. So I could
Even
see,
applications is if you knew anything about, is it appropriate to have multiple applications from one jurisdiction?
Ultimately,
the North Unit project, would they be asking the county to be the applicant, or are they talking about the district applying for funds?
I think they'd be coming to us, but I don't know.
well,
I'm just
ultimately, it
thinking
is
about
up to
that scenario.
Oregon.
It could happen.
the nice thing about, I mean, with our application, you know, Jefferson County is a partner. Their county commissioners signed a letter of support as well. So I do believe in Southern Oregon, it was either Jackson or Josephine, but they were close in proximity to one another. I don't know that both applications went through the county. So if the irrigation district is applying and Oregon Living with Fire is applying and they both happen to be in Deschutes County, I think we'll still be good.
Yeah, I would think they indicated that a county is the entity and not a district. I don't know if they can't apply or if it's better for a county to apply. So it was indicated to me that they'd be asking us to either endorse it or do the application. So I don't have clarity on that. I was just trying to bring that up.
Well,
Maybe as a
ultimately,
follow-up, we could ask Jen and Jody to just get us, clip some information from the request for proposals, explaining who's eligible so that we can understand, whether this North Unit project is going to have to ask us to be the applicant as well.
Well, ultimately, it is up to Oregon what gets sent through. So you can have as many applications as you want. Oregon is the one that goes, okay, yeah, that one's acceptable, or okay, no, that's not. So you actually have to get through a pre-application phase with Oregon to even be considered. And if those other applicants or examples that you have given have not been through Oregon's pre-application phase, they're not eligible for this cycle.
Okay.
That's
It's just, I've heard about it. It's coming around.
Can I ask, is the North Unit project it's a resiliency project because it's locally generated power to be put into the grid? I mean, that would also be, I think that would also be eligible for one of the Oregon Community Renewable Energy Program resiliency category grants. So you might let them know that they should be looking at that as well.
And just for
Rick
clarity,
mentioned all I'm bringing up.
and just for clarity,
we do have the
I'm
letter
sorry.
from Warm Springs endorsing this. Would it be possible to add the letter from the Jefferson County Commissioners to our record? Because according to their letter, they approved it also, the application.
Yeah, we can certainly add that.
That would just
was-
make our file more complete.
Sure. That was part of our submission, that pre-application that Jen was talking about, that intent. Jen has met all those deadlines, and the next one coming up is this month. So that's to get this package going. So yeah, we can definitely forward you the Jefferson County letter to include.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Can we have a motion?
I move to authorize the submittal of an application to FEMA for a Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? Mr. Chang,
Yes.
Mr. DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jody and Eric.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Be a very exciting project, improving the resiliency of really important cultural amenities, institutions in our community if this goes through.
Including my grandparents' sawmill, of course. Item number 7, the reallocation of grant funds to the Bend Heroes Foundation for the Veterans Village. Christy, thank you. And thank you, Eric, for joining us today.
Of course, thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. Quick update on Veterans Village, and thank you for your tremendous support over the years, and most specifically the last few months while we've navigated the whole SDC and federal funding issues. I'll have a quick rundown of where we are with the project. Just to remind everyone, the scope was to add 7 cabins to expand on the 15 that we had. So increase the capacity by about 50%, which will require increasing the utilities and the services in the community building, increasing the parking, which is a big deal, and some landscaping improvements. Here's a quick view of the site plan. All of the units will be have been added to the west edge of the property. Where we are, we're pretty much done with the cabins. We just have power left to be added to the site. That's been a little bit of a delay in working with the power companies and electrical engineers. We're trying to use the existing transformer. But once that gets done this month, we'll be ready for occupancy. Here's a quick view of where the site is in terms of completion. You'll see the 7 new cabins there on the right side of the screen or image. The left side are the existing, the blue and the white trimmed cabins. New cabins are a little bit taller because we use trusses this time to expedite production. And the foundation sits a little bit higher too. So it looks like they're different and bigger, but they're just a little bit taller. Same design. In terms of the progress of the project, we broke ground about 4 months ago. Our project manager from Hayden Homes said this is the fastest he's ever seen a project come out of the ground, which is saying something, given their experience in building homes. So we're pleased with the speed, and in general, very pleased with the financial results. In terms of our overall cost, we're running about 20% below our budget that we presented back earlier in the year. We're about 30% below budget if we factor out the SDCs, because as you know, we did not budget any SDCs. So yeah, in terms of how that's going, the site prep's about 15% below budget. In terms of the grading, utilities are a lot less, and the paving, it was almost zero. High Desert Aggregate donated the entire paving.
Could you repeat that name again, please?
High Desert Aggregate.
Okay. I just want to thank them. High Desert Aggregate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I
That
know
was a big cost savings.
Just did a fabulous job initially, didn't they?
Yeah, they donated the entire road and parking and path the first time around also. So we had budgeted that there would be a cost. We weren't necessarily, can't count on anyone giving away their hard-earned effort and payroll and materials, but they have again been generous with the project. York Brothers also helped us be under budget because of reduced costs. And the speed at which both of those companies worked was amazing. The cabins themselves are about 30% below our expected costs. And then the community building, on the other hand, is about 50% above. We forecast 50,000. It's a remodel, right? We're adding a bathroom, a shower, and remodeling the kitchen, adding stove, sink, and more counter space and more cabinetry. And that remodel work is more expensive than the whole building itself costs us $200,000. So we felt like, well, 50,000 to improve it, nominally wouldn't be that hard to achieve. But in fact, we had 4 bids and several of them were over $100,000. So we chose the lowest bidder, and it's also a very successful contractor, so with great experience. And so, but that's where we had a little bit of a budget overage. And of course, the SDCs, we budgeted 0, and now they are 55,000 approximately from the city of Bend. Parks and Rec waived their SDCs, which is fantastic. It was a unanimous vote. Even though we didn't meet their criteria of having a city waiver or a 30-year deed restriction, they have a process that allows waivers to have an exemption of the waiver rules. And the city, unfortunately, does not have that same rule. Yeah, our SDCs unbudgeted, though, are now half of what we forecast just a month ago. So total project about 408,000, including SDCs, 350, not including SDCs, versus our original budget of 500. In terms of where we are, So we need 408,000. We've raised 333. So that's about a $75,000 shortfall. We've raised about $179,000 from private donors. A little bit more than the 1/3 we initially budgeted coming from the community. Now about half of what our actual hard costs are, not including SDCs. The county has supported the project with $207,000 initially. $300,000 was our original grant, as you recall. And then we came back with the fact that we saw some cost reductions and whittled that down to $100,000 from the 300. Now we have a little bit higher cost than expected. So, but the SDCs were again had to be added back because they weren't budgeted. But like I said, Parks and Rec has waived those $52,000. And so the ask today is, given the $75,000 remaining to be raised and the fact that the county has already granted us $207,000, the $52,437 of Parks and Rec SDCs that have now been waived are due back to the county per the terms of the MOU, where any SDCs that were waived, because we were anticipating, pushing for waivers, that they be reimbursed back to the county. So the ask is that we retain that $52,000 instead of issuing it back to the county as a refund. And we use that for the construction for those costs that I mentioned that were a little bit higher than budget.
So we were involved with, making the choice about SDCs. We really want to push the city and the park district. And I was in support of getting those system development charges to the appropriate agencies for their future needs. When we have system development charge for a city, it's going to be transportation, safety improvements, capacity. And I thank the Park and Recreation District for being able to do that waiver. There's justification on both sides of that. So I guess my conclusion is this is a separate conversation. I would much rather not do this transfer here and call it a different ask. And I think it was kind of just starting the conversation with my fellow commissioners here. This was general fund is my understanding. This is a big commitment. We put a lot of resources in there, and I'm so happy that those cabins are there. But seeing this come up in the agenda, I was kind of shocked. Pretty bold request.
So Eric, we haven't talked about the successful program that we have had for just a little bit over 2 years now. I'm so proud of it. Whenever anyone talks about the homeless and what's really making a difference. And the last number I'd heard was that 19 veterans that had been in the program have actually moved on to housing. Is there an update to that number? I feel that it is so important that we have to be really proud. I mean, we copied Clackamas,
Right.
or Clackamas County originally, and to know that this is going on.
Yeah, the last number I heard was also 19, but I was talking to the program manager a couple of weeks ago, and he said there were a few people that were about ready to move on. And so they probably have moved on by now, but I haven't got an update this new year. So my estimates are over 20. And of course, with the 15 residents currently there, that makes it almost 40 homeless veterans that are not homeless anymore. The over 20 that have moved on to permanent housing, plus the 15 currently housed at the program. So yes, it's been successful, and that's why we decided to build more. And again, I think we're certainly going to get there and be ready for occupancy in about a month. The shortfall on the funding relates to the expansion of the community building services, which are necessary, but on the other hand, if it takes time to raise those funds, we're not going to impact the amount of homeless veterans that we can serve. It will just be people waiting for showers and bathrooms and cooking facilities, and maybe a little bit of crowding in the community building, but in terms of dining capability, but in terms of providing that essential housing component and the on-site case management, that's going to happen, by my estimates at the end of this month for the 7 new cabins.
What about the heating and cooling units for those? Did you include that in the costs, or do we need to reach out to our community again?
No, the heating has always been budgeted going back to day one. That was a major distinction between Clackamas. They didn't have any insulation or heat or toilets or plumbing, or sink, in the units. And so that was budgeted. Air conditioning wasn't initially budgeted, for the first 15 units. And so that's when we had to raise a little bit of outside support to add air conditioning, because we started to have 100-degree days, more frequently in this region than, let's say, we were, forecasting back in 2000 when we started the project. But no, we have funding for the cabins to complete the cabins, period. It's just a matter of doing the community building expansion that we're running a little bit short on.
Right.
Eric, very supportive of the project, really excited about what Veterans Village has accomplished, and the addition of these 7 units and the future or the near future improvements to the community building. My questions come back to the city of Bend. We did, it was our choice not to grant a longer lease to Veterans Village that triggered the city of Bend not being able to waive the SDCs. So, on a certain level, I feel like the county should be willing to pay for that. But going back to the conversation we had, I can't remember when we had the conversation about allocating these funds. There was a moment where Bend Heroes Foundation said, we want to move fast on this project. We could go ask the city of Bend for some cash as well, but that would slow us down. So can the county give us, $200K for this? And at the time, I wanted to see the project move fast too, but I also wanted the city to contribute. So, my key question at this point is, have you made a request to the city? And what is the status of that? Because one way to make the project whole and move forward with the whole enchilada at this point would be for us to grant over these kind of $52K in holding. Another way would be for the city to contribute to the project. And if they haven't, then I would really like to see Veterans Village ask the city, especially since we went the extra mile and we paid their SDCs. You're paying their SDCs. But you pay their SDCs and then they grant back, a grant of some kind to help move the project along.
So yeah, the formal way of requesting funds through the city is through the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, AHAC, which we did requested $400,000 before our first meeting with the county last year, and it was denied. So the city has provided no funding to the project. We will, if we are unsuccessful today or in raising funds through the county for 2/3 of our shortfall, then we will go through multiple sources, including AHAC. It will just be a longer process, right? Because of when their cycle starts and when they grant the funding. And that's why we focused on building the cabins as the fast item, right? Is we could have spent lots of time and federal dollars researching the remodel and, getting lots of bids, and spent our money on that resource on the community building. But for me, it seemed like the more important priority was to have shelter for 7 homeless veterans. So we did, in fact, move fast with the county funding. And it was extraordinarily helpful because we, in anticipation of the county funding, got work going, and then the funding came in at the right time to take care of that work. We can, continue to raise money through the private community. Everyone in this town and region is a supporter of the project. And, you know, so that's, like I said, we will be successful. We will finish the community building. The cabins will be occupiable, with no more dollars needed to be spent on that regard.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize, I'm not asking this to kind of wag my finger at you like you should have turned over more rocks to look for money. I appreciate that you are doing this on a volunteer basis, and unlike a established, a nonprofit with dedicated staff that can go chase all kinds of different, funding sources. You don't have those kinds of hours to put in. But I did want to ask about whether the city of Bend had considered any kind of contribution to the project. And
Yep. Yeah, we'll definitely pursue it, as required.
What I really want to commend you for is the fact that your costs have been below what you projected. I mean, Eric, if more people could follow your model, and I know this isn't your main line of work, it's truly remarkable. And it shows the fact that we have, almost 17,000 veterans in Deschutes County. And the respect that's given to them, after attending the event for Pearl Harbor Day at Bend High, that was an amazing program. And you have to be so proud that that was part of what those students saw that day, honoring those 33 people that lost their lives in World War II. Anyway, I'll make the motion. I don't know if anybody's going to second it. I know it's out of order, but
I'd be happy to make the motion.
oh, please do. Thank you.
Move approval of chair signature of an amendment to the MOU Memorandum of Understanding with Bend Heroes Foundation and Central Oregon Veterans Outreach to reallocate $53,000 in grant funds toward the community building remodel project at Veterans Village.
And I'll second it. Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne,
No.
and the chair votes yes.
So I'm so supportive of the project. As I say, I think community efforts and fundraising is where we should go with this. That's my only thought.
And just if I may make one more comment,
You may.
because you jumped right at the the motion. You gave me credit for the fiscal responsibility on the project. I can't take credit for it. It's the community, it's the businesses. They know what it's for. They give us the best cost they can, to the extent sometimes no cost, right? And every business we tell them this is what the cause is, and they're the ones being fiscal responsible, with the county's money, with the community's money, and same with the private donors. They're saying, hey, we'll offer you some funding, but what's your model and how are you doing it? So basically, the whole region is being fiscal responsible with your dollars. So I want to thank them for that.
And please tell Dave, thank you for being there and doing what he does so incredibly well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Item number 8.
Commissioners, this is a reconsideration of the Deschutes County, Oregon Judicial Department, which we refer to as OJD Courthouse Improvement Intergovernmental Agreement, Amendment number 1. On December 13th, 2 commissioners indicated support for, I referred to the red line. Now we have a new copy in front of us. It's a blue line, underlined amended version of that agreement. And the key issue is whether the 3rd floor is going to be required to only be used for courtrooms, for the court, or there's more flexibility. And as we know that the allocation from the legislature did not include such a requirement. The Oregon Judicial Department included the requirement in the amendment. Commissioner Adair asked for a bit more time to contact the governor's office regarding the requirement and the underlined revisions that we have, the draft agreement, as well as the underlined revisions that we have. Thanks to Dave, legal counsel, for proposing these amendments. So with that, commissioners, I'll turn it over to you to see where you would like to go with either the agreement you have before you, or if there is another, if there are additional revisions that you would like to consider before we return this to the state of Oregon to complete the amendment number 1.
So last time we talked about this, it was in deference to you, Commissioner Dare, making sure that we're all on the same page here. So this is the three of us being able to do this together. It is 1 floor, 2 courtrooms, 4 future courtroom needs. So that's, I think the vision. So if we get into a contract or an expectation of utilization of that space and it becomes a project to, unplug from that's, I can see the, the two sides of this, why we're being asked this. So, I'm supportive of proceeding at this time and unless we have other information.
Commissioner Tang?
My big concern is the interest we could be earning on these $15 million while we're holding in the bank. That is, at current rates, that is possibly $10,000 per week. And, as earning rates increase, it could be more closer to $14,000 per week. So that is, if there's a real possibility of coming up with a good project to use that 3rd floor space in the interim between when the Oregon Judicial Department needs it for those 2 additional courtrooms, and now, then I'm very interested in and open to hearing about that. But if we don't think that that's a real possibility, I don't want us to miss out on earning those returns on that $15 million for very long.
Thank you. Yes. As we all know, time is money, and I do feel that it is fascinating working for almost 6 months with the federal court that wanted to come to Central Oregon, to Bend, that we have 2 people that want to be here. Of course we do. That's called a win-win, and somehow we'll make the federal system a win also. It's really interesting that we received general funds, and yet this amendment was added on. When is it dated? Yes. Anyway, I'm fine with it because I will keep working on the whole goal. So.
Oh, and I'm supportive of that goal also.
So anyway, is there a motion?
A motion may not be necessary. I defer to legal counsel.
It says move approval of the revised.
If there was a change to the prior indication of support, then there would be a motion would be required. But if the board's not inclined to change the prior indication of support, then legal counsel can proceed with returning the amendment to OJD.
Okay, so that means I never voted on it.
Oh, and we didn't either, because it was presented to us.
You indicated support though.
Well, we indicated, let's make sure Commissioner Dare's up to speed on this.
Okay, so, and who's going to sign this agreement then? I was just wondering. Good morning, Mr. Doyle.
Well, Commissioner Doyle, County Attorney. Ultimately, this would be, I believe the original agreement was signed by the county administrator. I believe he was authorized to sign that. And I would assume he'd be the same one signing. The board would have to give that authority ultimately for him to sign it. But I believe the original MOU for the dollars, the board had authorized the county administrator to sign that. So it'll be your choice.
And this is.
You want to sign it or you want to authorize the county administrator?
So is it going to be signed today then and sent to them?
Oh, no.
No, so we're sending it back. Yeah.
So
this isn't.
They'll be seeing our.
Oh, our blue lines, and they're
This
going to
isn't
set
a-
it if they don't like them.
Yeah, so this is negotiations.
Well, okay. I just didn't want to stop the county from getting any $10,000 a week. So, okay. We'll see how fast they answer then. All right. Any more comments? Thank you very much.
So we at this point, we're just sending them back our suggested revisions, and we don't need a motion. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, other items? Were we supposed to have a letter that was going to go to Larry Baker or Lapine? Does anyone remember from like about a week or two ago? We were going to send a letter down there.
I recall that
Eric
Deputy
was going to do one.
County Administrator Eric Kropp is working on that and likely coordinating with Christy Bollinger, our property manager.
So it's still coming.
Perhaps as we consider maybe other items, Whitney might be able to coordinate with Eric, and I see her nodding yes, so she will coordinate with Eric to see if there's a draft letter for board consideration.
Okay, and I guess I'm assuming we all received the notice for the invitation to the Fair Association dinner in Middle Sisters and that we need to RSVP. It is on January 15th of 2024.
Coming up quick.
And it perhaps will be the last time it's held on Martin Luther King Day. They've changed their bylaws. So sad evening.
So I've got a couple items then. So the Eastern Oregon Commissioner's invitation by Senator Finley, phone call at 7 a.m. Tuesdays, just confirming. Commissioner Dare, you're going to dial into that?
I dialed into it, yes. Heard from a lot of people, and also part of that was the investigative training for the wolves. Commissioner Nash brought that up. It's on the 23rd in Pendleton. A lot of people are having excessive wolf issues. The compensation is going to be needing to be revisited. And one of the commissioners brought up the fact that consumption of cows, when the wolves have been running them, it really goes down. So it sounds like this could be a good event to go to.
So that was an invitation for commissioners, district attorneys, sheriffs, public safety.
Right.
And you said you may.
Yeah, I was going to go if it wasn't freezing fog. I've tried to drive to Pendleton before, and I only got to Grass Valley because it was freezing fog the whole way, or not the whole way, but it was pretty bad. Did you get that invitation?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I shared it with the Wolf Committee, and most of the folks on the Wolf Committee said, well, we don't need to learn how the investigation works, basically to get depredation compensation. It needs to be an approved investigator from the state who does the determination. So they are, the committee is definitely interested in all kinds of other things, wolf harassment, wolf depredation related, but there wasn't anyone who was interested in going to the investigation training.
Okay. I think almost every county had a commissioner going, so I will definitely try my best to go, weather related. We did have a really strange event happen on New Year's Day regarding a horse death. And the sheriff's office has been involved, public health has been involved, and the state veterinarian actually called me yesterday. And I just heard back from Shane. They are now they're working with County Road to get the job done today. And they are using special protective gear. So anyway, the state veterinarian wasn't particularly concerned about it, but some other people in the community were. I don't know how many of you guys heard fireworks and guns being shot on New Year's Eve, but the state veterinarian thought that this had scared the horse, and that's why the horse had passed away, because it was running and running, and then it had a heart attack and died. So it's out there, and we should have an answer soon.
One more item, AOC meetings this Friday and Monday. So I'll drive to Salem for Monday's meetings to be in the legislative committee, and I'll go Sunday night. So then I'll be at the couple meetings before the legislative meeting in the morning also. Get up to speed for this short session.
I'm considering going for the joint public safety, health and human services steering committee meeting as well. One other item. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So another item, Northwest Forest Plan Amendment. I think we got email or just notified that that's how going on. It's a Northwest Forest Plan. So Commissioner Chang, if you can help me on this, does that cover the hold shoots or not?
Covers a very small portion of the Deschutes,
So-
the higher elevation portions of the Deschutes, which are most of which are wilderness and designated roadless areas
So there's a defined line part of the way through the Deschutes National Forest.
called the Owl Line,
Owl line, okay.
because Northwest Forest Plan was primarily focused on, or it was centered around spotted owl management.
Do you think it'd be appropriate to put information in the record about 2-week stay enforcement on the national forest in this conversation, or is that a whole different conversation?
Well, if you look at where the Owl Line is, those are the parts of the Deschutes National Forest where people are not.
Yeah, that's what I'm
camping.
concluding when you say there's an owl line. Yeah, I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, so the area covered by the Northwest Forest Plan roughly corresponds to where the mixed conifer forest tapers off into what was historically more pure ponderosa pine or dry mixed conifer. So
And there was an article in the paper today.
the part that's real cold and real wet.
Yeah.
And real high.
Gary Lewis article in the paper today about homeless encampments and dogs disrupting mule deer corridors, of which is interesting, take on that. So it's pretty tangible to think that there's a lot of disruption happening in our forested areas for those mule deer migration routes with permanent, unsanctioned camping and dogs.
Yeah, I found it very ironic that Gary Lewis, who came out so strongly against the mule deer winter range overlay expansion, is now suddenly concerned about human impacts to mule deer winter range.
That's all I have.
Little hypocritical.
Thank you so much, Commissioner DeBonne. Commissioner Chang, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'll just mention that in response to our letter to AOC about the new proposed wildfire suppression funding structure, Commissioner Perkins contacted me and said he wants to better understand the questions and concerns of Deschutes County. At the same time, there's a couple of strands of wildfire funding stuff going on that I don't fully understand how they interact. But Senator Golden from Jackson County has put forward a proposal to look at reinstating a timber excise tax in order to fund wildfire suppression activities. So again, I don't know exactly how these things interact, but if we're talking about, if ODF primarily provides fire protection to protect timber, I think that a timber excise tax, which Oregon used to have, might be a better way to fund that activity than asking every single property owner in the state of Oregon to pay for protection, fire suppression in timber areas. And it'd be very interesting to see how that landed for Deschutes County as opposed to other counties, because there's very, very little private industrial timberland, and there's very little private industrial timberland harvest in Deschutes County, so those taxes wouldn't land very heavily here.
Well, I saw a logging truck go down Sisters Main Street this morning, and I thought, okay, that man is driving over the mountain, probably to Sweet Home or something. Yes. So it's nice when you were raised in Hebner to actually see a logging truck heading west. So I guess, because where do they go if they're heading east? Did you say that the mill at Gilchrist has closed down a bit?
The log decks are pretty full and the warehouse is full. So they're just kind of jammed up where they need somebody to buy their products. So, but it's good that they have logs available.
Yeah.
And the logging truck you saw was probably coming from federal harvest projects, which are not subject to a state timber excise tax.
All right. Any other? I know that we have something important, Nick.
We do. Thank you, Commissioners. On December 19th, we received a letter from Shannon Davis, the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, Deputy Director, and I'll pass I think you have an electronic copy, but here's a hard copy, and I've entered one into the record here. From DEQ, and I'll just read what it says at the start, requesting a meeting proposal for county and DEQ staff to discuss future septic development and variances in southern Deschutes County. The purpose of my bringing this to you now is to ask if you would like to proceed directly to staff scheduling that meeting with DEQ, or if you would prefer individual meetings first. And just to refresh your memory, if you haven't had a chance to review the letter since it came just before the holiday, and that was via email, the letter addresses a number of topics that they would like to discuss, including the variance process for approval of individual septic systems, the DEQ 2023 sampling of private residential wells that I know the board's been interested in.
When I talked to them, I know it was in Eugene at AOC, and I'm like, where are those results? And they said they didn't know.
Right. Right. So this would be an opportunity to learn more about that and engage with them in the discussion of that. They discuss whether a determination of a public health hazard is necessary, convening a meeting with non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, third-party stakeholders, et cetera, on the installation and funding of sanitary systems, waste water systems, Goal 11 exceptions, exemptions, et cetera, stating that some parcels are not suitable for septic systems, discussing suggestions or modifications of county rules to meet rule requirements, which is interesting given that we're an agent of the state. So we implement their rules, but that, and then discussing just a range of topics that are in the letter here. So certainly an important letter we received from DEQ a couple of weeks ago. And so again, my ask of the board is if you'd like to meet with DEQ staff individually first to learn a bit more about it, or if you would prefer that we just proceed directly to a public meeting with DEQ.
I would vote for individually meeting before we do a public meeting.
Okay.
I think we need to know more. I didn't get any answers in November, and this has been on my desk for months, wondering, okay, I know they were doing the studies.
I was kind of thinking of, work session style meeting, laying out, relationship building as a board. I don't know that I need an individual meeting, but if individual meetings are precursor, that's fine also.
I would lean towards going directly to the public meeting. I agree that we need to learn a lot more, and we can do that. I feel like we can do that either way.
Okay, how about if we will then work with DEQ based on two commissioners would like to proceed, but we'll make the individual meeting optional for Commissioner Adair. We'll be happy to do
I've been
that.
asking them.
We'll begin to work with them. I think we'll aim for either late January or sometime in February. And I expect that there will be quite a bit of public interest in this in the meeting. So generally a work session, we would meet upstairs, but just given the potential attendees, we'll plan to have it here, whatever day works best for the board and for DEQ staff. So thank you very much. I just wanted to check in with you on that letter. Thank you.
Just, the words public health hazard jumped out at me here. So the bullet point specifically says, discuss whether a determination of public health hazard by DLCD and DEQ may be a precursor to sewer or water services to rural lands via Goal 11 exception. So they're not saying that they need to go to a public health hazard. It sounds like they want to use it as a tool to justify something. But yeah. This just happens to be the topic that got me engaged way before, and I ran for office on protecting good groundwater. And we do want to protect good groundwater. We do have good groundwater. So,
And we did make that determination on the ADU bill where we set it at 5 acres for South County, waiting for the report from DEQ. So
taking a precautionary approach.
right, conservative approach.
Yeah. Nick, as part of this process, I don't know if DEQ are going to be the people who have the historical knowledge to share with us, but I suspect you have some of this, and somewhere within the county we have the rest of it. I would like to have a better understanding of the prior efforts to get Goal 11 exceptions. Broadly at the high level, my understanding is if we had pursued a narrower geography, we could have gotten some goal 11 exceptions. And then, there would be all of the challenges that we're seeing in places like Terrebonne with, how do you actually finance the development of a wastewater system, which is extremely challenging, but at least we would be past the, is this allowed? Is this not allowed? Question. So it would be really helpful to to kind of have an analysis of, why were we not successful with goal 11 exceptions in the past? What would be a package or a plan or a strategy to put something forward that would be successful?
Thank you, Commissioner. We can certainly prepare that memorandum, that summary memorandum prior to the work session and deliver it in the same meeting packet. We can also, I expect our community development department staff will also work with DEQ on whether they want to provide a summary of an extensive process that they had working with Southern Deschutes and Northern Klamath County residents on a whole series of recommendations, and maybe just a brief update on what transpired, what happened with each of those recommendations as well, to give the Board of Commissioners a good snapshot, at least an understanding of kind of where we've been over the last 15 years or so, and where we're at now, and then kind of the key is in what prompted this letter.
Right. Yeah. No, I do. A more comprehensive background would be great.
Right. We'll be pleased to do that.
In addition to having a chance to kind of ask a whole bunch of questions to DEQ directly.
Great.
So first thought, just information for everybody. I mean, goal 11 exception, Department of Land Conservation and Development, a blanket ask for Southern Deschutes County. It needs to be prioritized with use analysis of, well, we think we have a problem here. So the land use system is such that we have determined land use advocacy group saying, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. We're going to take it. We're going to appeal it. We're going to stop. And then DEQ is saying, hey, we got a problem here. So we have two state agencies that are maybe kind of not prioritizing who's leading and who's following. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Yes, we can study this and analyze it to the rest of time, or we could get some clear guidance from the state where if there's an ask about a goal 11 exception, how about we not put ourselves through a multi-year, thousands or tens of thousands or $1 million project studying the problem and just get some clarity on it. So I'm just pointing out that different departments of the state, we could end up in the middle between two. So
as part of that goal 11 analysis, it would be great to get, maybe direct input and direct history, direct feedback from DLCD. And
I think their website's still online, all the South County groundwater protection, whatever the URL might be, it's all there.
We can certainly provide that. I will just give thanks again to John Jennings, the DLCD staff who helped co-write our goal 11 exception and submitted it in 2013. But as you mentioned, that wasn't successful, and we'll provide the summary of why not and what might have a better chance of success going forward.
Yeah, and maybe we can ask John Jennings to
attend,
participate in telling that story.
Happy to do so.
Well, and Central Oregon Land Watch, I mean, because I was with Paul Dewey, and Paul Dewey's like, no, why would we not appeal this? The state land use system says we put people in a city, rural should stay rural. This is what we do. So that's their whole mission in life, is to stop things on private property. So this is, where I get my history.
Well,
so my point is welcoming them to the table. I'm not picking a fight here. I'm just welcoming them to the table.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's possible that if this was more geographically tight back in the day, that it could have moved forward. So if that's it, then we don't oppose this if it's clipped to this geography where it could make a really big difference and have an impact and doesn't threaten to kind of.
Well, as I say, it says failed goal 11 efforts by I don't know if it says convene a meeting for nonprofits, third-party stakeholders, support of installation, funding of sanitary systems, water system, goal 11 exceptions, or all alternatives. Maybe that's not the statement, but Is there another one here that says something about
It's the
failed goal?
fourth paragraph at the end where it says goal 11, we're
If,
unsuccessful.
yeah, I mean, the key message is if there's a pathway to a successful goal 11 exception, we should understand what it is.
Two agencies jerking us around.
Okay, but remember, I grew up in Hebner and Monroe County has had the biggest fines ever, and that was, the problems there were hidden for quite a while, so.
Oh, yeah, no.
And there will be thousands and thousands of people living with contaminated drinking water for decades in that community.
Well, and we could have been farther down the path with goal 11 if it wasn't for this justification of, well, let's just carve it out and make a special little path here that we approve of because we, the people of somewhere else, want to tell you how to develop. So as I say, we're going to get into it. This will be exciting.
If that more surgically focused goal 11 exception could have moved and could have had a significant impact, then we need to be critically looking at past county decisions to pursue a broader geographic goal 11 exception.
Okay,
We'll get into it.
That's the last word.
As I say, I sat in a room with the residents of the area with DEQ once a month for 2 years. I mean, we've talked through all these different things, and now with some experience, I get to see the different agencies. Well, we want you to do this. Well, you can't do that. So it'll be.
And out of all the churn of that era, some very good things happened for the county in terms of protecting groundwater quality, but apparently the data is telling us now that they were not enough.
Okay, my question now is, we're going to hear about the letter from Eric then at our next meeting,
We
probably.
will plan to do so. We have not heard back from Eric at this point,
Okay.
so next week we'll talk to Eric.
Okay, Whitney, did you have something you want to add?
Eric did respond and he communicated that it sounds like he sent a draft electronically and had opened a period for feedback that could be provided by the board in a written manner through Friday of this week. So he's happy to finalize the letter as drafted or adapt it based on any feedback that the board may have.
Okay, so we'll look at it and get back to him by Friday. Fabulous. Thank you so much, Whitney. Is there an executive session today? I see 2 attorneys in the room. Okay, all right. Well, if not, then let's adjourn our meeting for the day. And our next meeting will be next Wednesday. We do not have a meeting on Monday because that is AOC Day. Drive safely out there and watch out for black ice and freezing fog.